So as I said, welcome along to the OCS industry analysis for the November 2020 and February 2021 case study exam. So here we're looking at the mattress and bed industry broadly speaking. But before I get into the actual content of today's industry analysis, I just want to cover some common questions and doubts that students have regarding what exactly the industry analysis is, what it should be, and indeed why we're doing an industry analysis in the first place. After all, you are provided with some industry information in the pre-seen document itself. The first thing I want to say is you are not expected to be an industry expert by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, CIMA does not expect you to know everything there is to know about the broader real-world industry of the business that's being looked at in the pre-seen document. So don't worry if you're not familiar with all of the operations, processes, trends, and so on in the industry. That's not what's expected. But the purpose of the industry analysis really is just to make you more comfortable with some of the general ideas, concepts, and trends that are actually occurring in the real world industry. There are two really key potential benefits on exam day from doing an industry analysis like the one we're doing today. And it gives you an understanding of that wider business environment and industrial context. That's always useful. It's especially useful in the case of the case study exam for the two following reasons. Firstly, it helps you to anticipate some of the potential issues that might arise in the unseen scenario on the day of the exam, and thus avoid surprises or confusion. So it's often the case that having done an industry analysis, students are actually better placed to anticipate some of the scenarios, the unseen scenarios that are presented on the day of the exam. Now, it might not necessarily give you an insight into the actual topics that are tested or the theories or models that are relevant, but it will give you a better idea of the general situations that might arise, the general business situations that might arise, be it some kind of demand shock or some kind of new product line, for example. And then from there, having anticipated the general scenario, then you can kind of narrow down the range of potential topics, potential subject topics, for example, from F1, P1 or E1 that might come up on exam day. So that's the real useful aspect of doing an industry analysis, is it can help you to really focus in on the more probable or likely scenarios and subject topics that might arise on the day of the exam. It also does another really useful thing for you on exam day, potentially at least, is it makes it easier for you to illustrate and apply your abstract theoretical knowledge by using concrete examples and specifics. Now, primarily what the examiner expects you to do is to use pre-seen information and indeed the unseen information that you're presented with on your exam day to show that you have very good technical and theoretical skills and knowledge, but to apply it in a realistic, practical, real world setting. Okay, so that's the real idea of the case study exam, is for you to demonstrate that you can really apply your knowledge in a realistic way, in a practical context, and that you understand how to integrate your knowledge with real world situations, real world ideas and concepts. Okay, now using the pre-seen information and using the unseen information is the primary way of doing that, but also industry examples can help you to elaborate on certain points in the exam. Okay, so you might be stuck for an example. The industry analysis can help you using different examples from the real world. You might think of different examples in the real world in terms of companies, real world products, real world materials, supplies, and so on and so forth. You can integrate that then into your exam day answer. So they're the main benefits of the industry analysis. So it's not about knowing everything there is to know about the industry. That would be a waste of time. But really, it's just about giving you some extra concepts, ideas, tools that can help you to anticipate some potential scenarios and trends on the day of the exam. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the structure of today's presentation. We're going to start with a general overview of the mattress and bed market. From there, then we're going to home in on some of the main trends and innovations in the industry, a closer look at those developments. And then in the final section, section 3, we're going to look at some real world companies, two in particular, Casper and Tempur Sealy. Interesting to compare and contrast those companies. And then you can use that to generate some insights into the pre-seen company that we're dealing with. Okay. Now, at the end of this presentation, the PowerPoint itself which will be uploaded to the website, and you'll be able to access it through your course contents. From that industry PowerPoint, you will also have links, okay? There'll be lots of links to the supporting documentation and supporting information for today's presentation. So you can look into that in your own time if you wish to do so, do a deeper dive whenever you wish to do so. Okay, so let's start with section 1 then, mattress and bed market overview. Just some general points here about the transformation of the mattress industry in particular over the last century or so. In the 20th century, the mattress market went through somewhat of a revolution as different types of mattresses were introduced into the market. During this period in particular, pocket sprung and memory foam mattresses gained huge popularity with demand skyrocketing. Okay, especially in the last 20 years, it's been the memory foam trend which has really taken over in terms of growth. Okay, in terms of the segments within the mattress market, broadly speaking, you have the memory foam making big gains in the last 15 or 20 years or so. Nowadays, mattresses have become associated with optimizing both comfort and healthy sleep cycles. Okay, so whereas before traditionally it was all about comfort, now we're seeing increasingly scientific and medical concerns and considerations being factored into the design of mattresses, the production of the mattresses, but also especially the marketing of mattresses, as consumers are becoming more and more health conscious. So that's forced mattress manufacturers then to innovate as far as material and structures are concerned. And we're going to be going into all of these themes in more detail as we proceed through today's industry analysis. Let's look at some key market figures now. Okay, so just to give you a broad sense of the growth trends within this market, the global mattress market reached a value of $30.3 billion US dollars in 2019. So it is a significant sized market. Looking forward, it's expected that the market value will reach around $44 billion by 2025 at a compound annual growth rate of 6.2% during 2020 to 2025. Okay, so again, that's quite a healthy compound annual growth rate figure of 6.2%. What are the main market drivers? Well, the rise, of course, in disposable income is going to be very relevant to the purchase of mattresses. They are quite a significant investment after all. And so the more disposable income that becomes available in a country, in an economy, the more likely it is that you're going to have a healthy market for mattresses. Okay, so that's a growing middle class, especially in developing countries, Southeast Asia, for example, especially those residing in urban areas. Okay, so it seems urban consumers primarily are those who are more likely to and more frequently purchase mattresses. And that has a lot to do with proximity to major retail outlets that sell mattresses. Okay, and of course the convenience of having them delivered in a very short space of time. That makes it more likely that these consumers are easy to reach in terms of marketing. Or those moving, of course, from rural areas into urban locations, typically when they're purchasing new houses or renting new houses or new apartments in urban locations, they're going to be more likely, much more likely, to be searching for a new mattress or a new bed. Inner spring mattresses, okay, and pocket sprung mattresses in particular, they account for the majority of industry revenue. Still, that's around 55%. Box springs and other mattresses foundations account for about 20%. Other products include memory foam, latex foam, air, waterbed, and crib mattresses. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, memory foam in terms of growth is the highest growth sector in the last 15 or 20 years. Okay, but we're going to talk more about memory foam in a little while, some interesting controversies regarding that particular kind of mattress. Let's look at it regionally now, top markets in terms of market share. Asia Pacific, perhaps not surprisingly, is in the lead because, of course, of the size, the sheer size of the populations there in Asia Pacific. Followed by North America and Europe are likely to hold major market share owing to enhanced household furnishing expenditure. That's especially the case with the growing middle class in Asia Pacific, in conjunction with huge consumer bases and global manufacturers focusing on expanding their geographical reach. Okay, we're increasingly seeing international players come on the market now, and especially with the expansion of the online sector within this market, which we'll come back to momentarily. So you can see here on the right, Asia Pacific first, 41%, North America 31%, Europe then, that is to say the EU, at 20%, South America at 5%, Eastern Europe and Russia then at 2%, and 1% for Africa and the Middle East. Okay, so those top three markets, they're really dominating, 41%, 31%, and 20%, going between EU, North America, and Asia Pacific. Now let's look at this. This is an interesting point, and this is something I think you really need to bear in mind going into exam day. This is a very likely scenario based on real world factors coming up on exam day. So pay attention to this: market share by application. Okay, so we have two main segments within this market: domestic and commercial. Hotels are the main end users of mattresses in the commercial or corporate segment, as they change mattresses more often than residential users. Now, you'll remember from your pre-scene, if you've read the pre-scene, that the company in the pre-scene, AmaZZZing, does not currently cater to the corporate market. But you can see here on the right, based on this breakdown from 2018, the commercial segment is very significant indeed. The domestic is, of course, still the majority in terms of market share, but only marginally so, okay? So it is a very big potential market to tap into, the commercial or corporate segment. So something definitely worth keeping an eye on. Here's another very interesting statistic. On average, residential users change their mattresses only every 9 to 10 years, whereas it takes a maximum of 5 to 6 years, typically, for the hospitality sector to change their mattresses. Very interesting there, because of course you're going to have a higher rate of turnover from the consumer point of view, and that potentially makes it more profitable, generating more frequent revenue. So even though the commercial market remains a minority, a marginal minority in terms of market share of the overall mattress market, in terms of the frequency of purchases, that may well more than compensate for that relative minority of the market share. So very, very much something worth considering as a potential move that a company like AmaZZZing Beds might make in this industry. Okay, let's shift the focus now to consumer behavior. Considering how many mattress brands there are, and this is increasingly a competitive industry, especially with the advent of exclusively online retailers and producers, shopping for a new bed is not an easy task. Learning about mattresses, reading through dozens of mattress reviews, and comparing their features and prices can take a lot of time and effort, and people tend to do so given the expense. Okay, so people will typically spend hundreds of euros on a mattress, sometimes even going into the thousands in the case of the upper end and more luxury brands. So you can see here on the right, there's some interesting facts and figures. It takes consumers 3 to 7 hours to find the perfect mattress. Now that might not sound like a lot, but compared to many other typical products, consumer products, it's actually quite a significant chunk of time. That's 3 to 7 hours of research, if you think about it, and thinking about it and looking for different kinds of mattresses and comparing prices and products and brands and so on and so forth. That is actually quite a lot of time. 83% of all customers are somewhat satisfied with their mattress purchase. Okay, so a fairly good majority there who are at least somewhat satisfied with their mattress purchase. Now, the two most important factors here when buying a new mattress are price, not surprisingly, at 58%. But look at comfort, 56%. It's almost as important as price. Okay, so comfort still leads the way, although as I mentioned earlier, health concerns are becoming more important as well, as we shall see. Millennials then, 50% of millennials would consider buying a mattress online. Unsurprisingly, they're much more open to the possibility of purchasing from an exclusively online retailer than are other generations. And it would be the same, of course, for up and coming generations as well. 25% of people are unlikely to buy a mattress online. So that's overall, that's the overall market. 25% are unlikely to buy a mattress online. So it's really not that many actually that are unwilling and unlikely to buy a mattress online. This is really a growing segment of the industry, and again, one that needs to be kept a close eye on. What about other consumption drivers? When it comes to triggers to replace an existing mattress, you can see here we have an interesting breakdown as well. Health and comfort are brought together here to comprise 73%. Amongst 73% of people report that what triggers them to replace their current mattress are health and comfort concerns. Mattress deterioration, that is to say the deterioration of their current mattress, that's 72%, very close second. Mattress improvement, okay, the desire to improve the mattress that they're sleeping on. It doesn't really matter what are the factors, they just want a better mattress. That accounts for about 61%. Home improvement then, okay, so in this situation where you're doing a renovation or perhaps you're moving into a new house and you are doing up the inside, furnishing it and so on, that's another strong reason, 51%. And then time, okay, so this is, in other words, you feel that it is simply too long since you've replaced the existing mattress. You think it's about time that you replace your existing mattress, and that accounts for 49%. But really, in that context, 73% for health and comfort and mattress deterioration, those two are way ahead, relatively speaking. Those are the main considerations. And again, from a marketing and promotional point of view, those are the key points that companies need to hit on. Okay, those are the key selling points. In other words, they're going to have to think about, are we communicating that these are healthy and extremely comfortable mattresses that we are selling? That's going to be front and center when it comes to messaging, communication, and promotion. What about the competitive landscape in this industry? Well, the global mattress market is highly competitive, as was suggested in the pre-seen document. Major players account for significant shares in the market. With the presence and expansion of these numerous local players as well, the market is highly competitive. Okay, so we have a lot of both international and regional players in this space, wherein players are leveraging potential demand for mattresses globally. Okay, that is to say, the growth in demand, especially amongst those Southeast Asian countries, for the international players especially, and the expanding players who are looking to move into perhaps neighboring markets as well. That's where they're looking. They're looking to those high growth markets where the middle class is beginning to explode and you're seeing increases in disposable income. Some of the major players here, these are some of the most recognizable brands internationally. You have Paramount Bed Holdings, King Coil, Kingsdown, Sutherland Bedding, and Sealy Corporation. And we're going to look at two interesting companies, as I said, at the end of this industry analysis. Key trends. Okay, so general trends here, and then we're going to deep dive into some of the specifics of these trends in the next section. Due to a higher prevalence of back and posture related problems caused by sedentary work habits and old-fashioned bedding. So these two things coming together are increasing the demand as well for health-conscious beds and mattresses. There's now widespread switching to things like air beds, water beds, and foam-based mattresses that offer, or at least claim to offer, superior comfort through even distribution of pressure and body weight. And we're going to be looking at this in more detail shortly. Key players are focusing also on the introduction of things like organic mattresses made by utilizing natural and environmentally friendly raw materials such as wool, natural latex, and organic cotton. Okay, so from a supplies point of view, shifting towards organic and environmentally sustainable materials is becoming more and more important. And it's something that is kind of coinciding with that health concern. Okay, often people's health concerns are wrapped up in environmental concerns, or I should say environmental concerns feed into health concerns, because of course, if you're using synthetic and potentially toxic materials, that can also be eliminated by being more environmentally friendly. You can eliminate those toxic materials by shifting to organic materials instead, and you're killing two birds with one stone. Then you're generating, of course, more environmentally friendly mattresses, but also you can use that as a marketing tool when it comes to addressing health concerns. Bed in a box. This is a phrase you're going to come across again and again in this industry in the modern context. It refers to the increasing popularity of online mattresses and bed purchasing. The phrase itself comes from the very compact and innovative nature of the packaging. Now, this might surprise you. It certainly surprised me when I saw some of these things, as I've never purchased a bed in a box before, but it is incredible that they can fit an entire mattress, often of very high quality, in a very compact box. Okay, so this packaging process can actually be quite complicated and indeed quite costly to introduce these new packaging systems. But in terms of convenience, they're exceptional. And of course, then in terms of transport as well, you can fit many of these boxes into, say, for example, one delivery truck compared to the traditional means of transport for mattresses. Okay, so they've compacted these into a single box, and then sometimes they're rolled up, sometimes they're folded in a very specific way without compromising the quality or the integrity of the mattress. So literally speaking, you're getting a bed in a box. And this is an increasingly important facet or aspect of the exclusively online market. Those players who are operating in an exclusively online manner, they want to create as much convenience as possible, but also the most economical means of delivery. So it's good from the customer point of view because of the convenience, but also, of course, from their own point of view in terms of keeping those distribution costs down. Okay, so bed in a box, very much a trend to keep an eye on. Okay, returning now to some health concerns which have been raised in recent years, particularly when it comes to foam mattresses. Now, this might surprise you, and again, it certainly surprised me to discover this, that foam mattresses are not perhaps all that they're cracked up to be. Despite their very rapid growth in popularity over the last 15 or 20 years, foam mattresses do have certain potential downsides, and they're quite significant. So the main ingredient in most memory foam mattresses is what's called polyurethane, okay? Now, during manufacturing, polyurethane is often mixed with other potentially toxic chemicals that include many harmful compounds. Okay, I'm going to try to pronounce all of these, but I'm probably going to fail. Okay, so polyvinyl chloride, formaldehyde, boric acid, antimony trioxide, and different types of petrochemicals. They all sound pretty nasty, I think it's fair to say, and indeed they are objectively, based on the findings of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, confirm the toxicity of many of these materials. Okay, here's another tough one to pronounce. I'm going to give it my best shot. Diisocyanates, there we go. Diisocyanates are also found as ingredients that increase flame resistance, I should say, in foam mattresses. Okay, so that's obviously a safety concern. You want them to be as flame resistant as possible, but of course there's a downside here. In their raw forms, these chemicals can cause respiratory and even skin damage, and moreover, they are carcinogenic to humans. That is to say, they can cause cancer. So foam mattresses, increasingly a big concern from a health perspective, and consumers are becoming more and more conscious of this issue. There are other downsides associated with foam mattresses which may surprise you. First of all, of course, they are heavy. You will know that if you own one personally. They're quite heavy compared to traditional sprung mattresses. One person alone might not be able to set the mattress up initially, so from a convenience point of view, there's a downside. There's actually, interestingly, no scientific proof that their molding properties actually work. So often people tout these foam mattresses because they mold to the shape of your body, according to the marketing at least. But according to the National Sleep Foundation, there's actually no proof of this. Strong odors is another downside. At the beginning of their life cycles, especially foam-based products sometimes produce a chemical-like smell, which can be unpleasant. Perhaps some people might like it, but most people tend to not enjoy those kinds of smells. Increased risk of death in infants. Again, this is a surprising one. Soft bedding like memory foam can trap carbon dioxide, which can potentially be fatal to infants. Now, I'm not trying to freak you out. For any of you who are parents, it's not my intention. I'm just trying to make you aware of some of the potential issues that might arise on exam day when it comes to controversies, for example, and scenarios that might come up. Poor body support. Okay, so not good for people who turn while they sleep because deep rivets form in the mattress at key pressure points and can make it difficult to roll over. I actually have to say personally, I have experienced this with a previous foam mattress that I slept in. I found myself sinking into the middle of the mattress and then finding it very hard to actually move and turn during my night's sleep. And I tend to be a mover and a turner, so it was actually quite disruptive to my sleep. Too hot. Temperature issues, these come up as well when it comes to foam mattresses. These beds tend to retain body heat and may not be practical, especially in the context of warmer climates. So the industry is slowly waking up, no pun intended, to some of the issues with foam mattresses: heat regulation, toxic chemicals, poor body support, risk of death for infants, strong odors. There are so many potential downsides from foam mattresses. The perception still remains quite good overall when it comes to foam mattresses. People still tend to think that they are quite cutting edge, that they're good for support and comfort, but there is a growing awareness of many, if not all, of these issues, and that's something that manufacturers are going to have to pay very close attention to. Now let's move on to bed frames, okay? So we're not only talking about mattresses, but of course we're also talking about bed frames here in the context of this pre-seen document. What I want to do here really is focus on those bed types. There's 4 main bed types that are mentioned in the pre-seen document, and often without a visual it's kind of hard to understand what's being spoken about. So I want to just kind of elaborate and clarify visually and indeed with some explanation as well what exactly these kinds of beds are. Okay, so we're starting here with divan beds, and these are the beds that are manufactured by AmaZZZing Beds in the pre-seen document, so it's good to know what exactly this is. You can see here a picture on the right of the screen You can see an example of what exactly it looks like. In basic terms, a divan bed is made up of a specially designed base and matching mattress. The base is created from a wooden frame that's surrounded by fabric, with the base often having drawers for storage. Okay, so these divan beds often have built-in storage underneath. As you can see in this example, you have drawers on the side of the bed, and sometimes you also have versions where the mattress will actually you'll be able to lift up the mattress, and there'll be a platform on which the mattress is sitting. You can lift that platform up and you'll have a huge amount of storage underneath. So there's variations on the kinds of storage. What you need to bear in mind here is basically that the frame here tends to be wooden when it comes to these divan beds. So the outer structure tends to be wooden. It's quite a sparse frame, okay? So it's not very thick wood. Often it's not hard wood or cumbersome wood. It's a skeleton frame of wood, and then it's wrapped in a fabric, and that's what the divan bed looks like. The second type of bed then that was mentioned in the preceding document was the upholstered bed. And you can see here on the right a nice example of what an upholstered bed looks like. It's any bed frame, including the foot and headboards, that incorporates materials such as velvet, faux leather or suede, or other materials other than just the wood frame. Upholstered beds also include extra padding on the frame. So you can see here at the headboard and the footboard, you can see there are extra padding, and it makes it look more luxurious and plush and more comfortable and appealing as well. So these tend to be more expensive to manufacture, and indeed the sale price, of course, is higher generally as well than the simple divan bed here, which is what is manufactured by the company in the pre-scene. The third bed frame type that was mentioned then was the wooden bed frame, and you can see here a nice example on the right. This is a bed which includes a slatted mattress base within an exposed wooden frame. So you can see the wood here in this kind of bed frame. So in the case of the divan bed, the wood tends to be concealed and hidden behind some thin fabric. As you can see, it's wrapped around. But in this case, the wood is exposed as part of the frame. The slatted base can either be made using straight slats or curved sprung slats. Don't worry, we're going to come back to this in a moment. And upholstered versions usually include a built-in headboard, and some include underbed storage as well, but not necessarily. So you can see here, sometimes they're wrapped in an upholstered fabric. So you can see that fusion there of the upholstery with the wooden frame. Those again tend to be even more expensive because of the craft and carpentry involved in those kinds of beds. And indeed, the wood tends to be of a much higher quality in those exposed wooden frame beds. And then finally, we have the metal frame. This is a bed frame made of metal, unsurprisingly, with a slatted mattress base. Again, slats in the base can either be straight slats or curved sprung slats, and the headboard is part of the bed frame. Okay. Now, you might be asking, what on earth are slats? I keep saying slats, slats, slats. What exactly are they? Well, I'm sure you're familiar with these, but let's just make sure everyone is clear and on the same page here. These are bed slats. These are the things that support the mattress. Typically, you'll find these. Sometimes they're covered with some fabric, but in almost every single bed design, even the modern bed design, you're going to find these slats. Now, there are two varieties of slats that you might come across. The first are what are called straight or solid slats. These are the more traditional and typical slats you will find. These are more common, especially in single beds. They're often made from pine wood, which is much more solid, less flexible. Each slat runs across the entire width of the bed frame, and this creates a firmer, more supportive bed. These are the more, as I said, traditional supports that you will find in beds. Then we have these sprung slats, and these are becoming more and more common. Tend to be made from flexible beech wood rather than pine wood, with a gentle upward facing arch. These slats create a plusher and more cushioned feel. Okay, so from a comfort point of view, these are optimal, and they're now becoming increasingly the standard, especially in the case of double beds. Okay, so queen size, king size beds, and so on. Finally, there's the adjustable bed. I'm sure you've seen these before. These are not very common, it has to be said. Often involve sophisticated mechanization in the manufacturing process. Mattresses and bed frames need to be designed in conjunction as well. Okay, a very important point here, that you're going to have a specially designed mattress that fits in with that particular bed frame and is manipulable in the correct way. And that's not the case with your typical mattress. So those two things often sold in conjunction, one with the other, and there's very little in terms of switching around. Okay. These beds typically appeal to those with health and mobility issues. That is to say, people who are often bed bound for a long period of time. They need to adjust their position in order to keep blood flow going and so on and so forth. And less commonly, for those who are just lazy, okay? For those who, for example, spend a lot of time in bed reading or watching TV, often these adjustable beds are more appealing to those kinds of people. So that's the consumer segment that you're focusing on when it comes to adjustable beds. Now, you might be asking yourself, why so much emphasis on mattresses? We've been talking primarily so far about mattresses. Well, the reason is because, simply put, the mattress makes the bed. The mattress really is the key when it comes to comfort, when it comes to healthy sleep cycles. The frame, relatively speaking, when it comes to making purchasing decisions, it really is only from a design point of view, okay? What is the one that looks best with this particular mattress? That's generally the consideration that's taken into account. So aesthetics and design are very important when it comes to bed frames, but from a technological point of view and from a health science point of view, generally speaking, the bed is less important. It tends to be secondary. The mattress is really where it's at. And indeed, within this market, the mattresses are where the innovations are taking place and where most of the research and development is going on. Okay, so we're going to come back to this research and development point a little bit later on.